All right, guys, welcome back to another video. It's Coach Tommy here, and today I'm going to be breaking down my current off-season diet, how I'm going to be lean bulking. I'm going to go through pretty much everything with you guys, my calories for each day, the macros, the reasoning behind it, the benefits as to what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and really give you guys a great picture as to how maybe you could set yours up as well. Now, what I'm showing you guys here on this screen is how I went from 173 to 203 in the basically 10 weeks, and pretty much didn't put on much body fat at all. Obviously put on a lot of size, some muscle, some water, and of course a little bit of body fat, but overall looking and feeling really good for this weight. Now, this is not what's going to happen this lean bulk. This is a rebound phase. And when you are done post show, your ability to put on weight and mainly put on muscle and very limited fat is insane. It's this super physiological process that you can't explain on paper. It's not something you'll see in a textbook, but it works and it happens. And I mean, I think I'm kind of living proof of it right there. No one puts on 30 pounds and ends up looking basically the same leanness without having to do a diet over years. Like this is progress that you make over years in a 10-week post show scenario. And so now that phase is now done. I can't just keep doing that. Now I will start to get fat. So I have to transition into my off season. And that is this right here. Okay. So let's kind of go and break down what we're going to be doing to put on some muscle over the next 4 or 5 months without putting on too much body fat. Because body fat does come with a surplus, just like muscle does. They have to. All right. So a couple things. So I'm going to have 5 training days per week, 2 rest days per week, and my average calories is going to be somewhere around 3,100 per day. All right. This could be kind of close to my maintenance calories. And so I'm going to have to adjust depending upon how my weight fluctuates from week to week. I'll be looking at the average over 7 days. If my weight goes up too much, I'll bring calories down. If my weight doesn't move, I might have to bring it up a little bit. If I lose weight, I'll bring it up. But this is where I'm starting. Okay. And essentially, it's a carb cycling approach where on training days, my calories from carbohydrates will be significantly higher. And then on my rest days, they will be lower. And on my rest days, my fat will be a little bit higher. And like I said, my carbs will be lower, but protein is going to be consistent. Okay, so I'm not going to show you guys the reasoning or talk about that actually just yet. I'm going to show you kind of what my training day looks like. So what we have here is 270 grams of protein, 450 to 500 grams of carbs, 40 grams of fat, and around 3,300 calories per day. All right. And I'm really pushing the carbohydrates to allow for great training performance as well as helping with my recovery post those training sessions. When you train, GLUT4 is an ability to, it's really active, right? Really 4 hours past your workout. And that's when you're going to be able to shuttle a ton of nutrients into your muscle. And so that's what we really want to be doing on these training days where when we're resting, it's not going to be as active. So I don't feel the need to push as many carbohydrates in on that day or be in a surplus for that matter, but we'll come back to that. So on this day, we are in a surplus, meaning we are eating more food than we are expending by just a little bit, in my opinion, around 200 calories. So that should be in a place where most of these nutrients are going to be utilized, like I said, for recovery and energy and not spill over into fat storage. Okay. So we're going to have 6 meals per day. All right. And this is what it's kind of looking like. So meal 1, I keep 0 carb and I have some high fat and high protein. That's because I just feel better in the morning without carbs. When I have a lot of carbs in the morning, I just get really sluggish and that carries throughout the rest of the day. So I like to start my day with just some protein and fat. Meal 2 is technically my pre-workout meal. So we have about 100 grams of carbohydrates there, very little fat, as you can see, and the protein stays consistent across all meals. Now, I got that meal in about 2 to 3 hours before my workout. Make sure it's fully digested. Those carbohydrates should be filled in the muscle, ready to go. And then intra, I have 10 grams of amino acids and 30 grams of carbs. That's going to once again help fuel the performance, push those carbohydrates into the muscle so that I'm recovering during that session, able to maximize performance. And the EAAs are helping with the recovery and breakdown during that session as well. Post workout, about 30 minutes later, I'm having 45 grams of protein, 100 grams of carbs, very little fat. That's going to be super fast digesting, something that's going to get right into my bloodstream, digest immediately so that I can uptake all those nutrients while GLUT4 is super active. Now, as soon as that's done, about 2 hours later, I'm going to have meal 4. Once again, super high carb, This is going to be a more balanced meal, something like a chicken and rice, but it's still super low fat because GLUT4 is still super active. I want all those nutrients being pushed to the muscle. I don't want to have fat in there because there's no reason to have high insulin levels, high amounts of insulin with fat alongside of it. That will likely just lead to some fat storage, depending upon how the rest of your day is set up. So I don't like to do that. So I push the carbs high. And then one final not one final, but meal five, once again, is the same 100 grams of carbs, 45 grams of protein. At this point, the GLUT4 isn't super duper active. This is well past that 4 hour window, but this literature shows like 4 to 8 hours. It's still pretty high. And in my opinion, why not just keep pushing the carbohydrates and protein, knowing that carbs, if I'm really pushing myself, I should be relatively depleted. Those carbohydrates should be going to the muscle or being utilized as energy at this point. And I shouldn't really have to worry about fat storage. That is now done, and then the final meal before the day is more balanced. It's gonna be around 10 grams of fat, 50 protein, 50 carb and 45 protein. A little more balanced, lower carbs, because at this point, I've pushed them quite a bit. I don't really wanna have, like, my blood glucose spiking right before bed, so we throw some fat in there to slow down the digestion, and the protein here is a little bit slower too, so that I can have some food in me throughout the night while I'm in a fasted state. Um, and so that is kind of how I set up the training day. So just to reiterate, post workout, super fast digesting. Meal four and meal five are basically the same, chicken and rice, ultimately, just pushing nutrients in. And then meal six is something a little slower digesting. And meal one is high fat, high protein. Now you'll see these numbers don't add up perfectly, and that's because the fat intake is a little varied. It could be 5 grams, six, whatever. But on average, I'm eating around 40 grams of fat in that day. Now, okay. Kind of talked about this, but why the carbs run high, fuel performance, drive recovery, right? Now, let's talk about my rest day. All right. And what this looks like. So we have 270 grams of protein, 200 carbs, 70 fat, and it's around 2,500 calories. So I dropped the carbs a lot. Why? Because I'm not training. My activity is significantly lower, and I just had a ton of carbohydrates the day before. So I don't need as much. I still want some in there because that is going to help with carbohydrates in itself are anabolic because of the insulin that is associated with it, and which is going to help drive protein into the muscle. So we still want some there, but we don't need a ton. And I'm also going to talk about why I don't want so many carbohydrates on this day in just a moment. Since the carbs are dropped, I increased the fat a little bit. That's going to help with just like creating a nice, healthy hormonal environment. I'm also getting in a lot of healthy fats on this day, like olive oil. I like some coconut oil as well. That helps just with my energy levels. But the calories are lower, and I'm actually in a deficit here. And I'm in a deficit because the other days are in a surplus, and I want to just have a nice balanced surplus across the week. And this is going to help do that. I'm not worried about my recovery not being good because I'm in a deficit. We all know you can still build muscle in a deficit. So I'm not worried about that. And the protein is super high. And because the protein is high, if I was to utilize some of that protein as energy instead of carbs or fat, there's so much of it that it's okay because because the amount that I actually need in order to help build and repair muscle tissue is going to still hit. And that's why the protein is so high. So now let's go back to why I do this. So we talked about why I want high carbs: fuel the session, drive the performance, load the recovery. Now, why rest day, low carb, high fat? And the reason for that is a few. The biggest one is digestion. Okay. Carbohydrates, the food volume is just super high. Okay. And by decreasing that food volume and having less carbohydrates and then getting fat from more oils, my stomach just isn't taking as big of a hit. And so my digestion improves, my hunger comes back, and I'm ready for that next day. Versus if I still had a ton of high carbohydrates on this day, my stomach's still going to have to take that hit. I'll start to get backed up. And then if your gut health isn't good, then you're not digesting the food well. And that's going to, of course, affect your ability to build muscle and perform well in the gym. Now, the next reason is because when I have higher fat and on my rest days is when I work a ton, like all day long, my brain fog is significantly decreased. Like I don't need my blood glucose spiking up and down repeatedly. It just makes me feel tired. I don't feel good. I'm not as productive. And so higher fat, as you can tell, I'm talking super fast right now. It makes me feel great. And so that's why I do it. And then the last one is honestly probably the most important from a hypertrophy standpoint, is that it helps reset insulin sensitivity. If you're consistently pushing high amounts of carbohydrates every single day, And what I've seen on myself is that my muscle cells become less receptive to taking in those carbohydrates. And what happens is essentially the muscle cell shuts off from taking in nutrients, and those carbohydrates then end up sitting in the bloodstream for longer. And if they don't go to muscle or liver, they're then going to be either used as energy, which can be great, and a deficit that might happen. However, they could also then become fat storage. And I'm not so much worried about them becoming fat storage on rest days. I'm worried about them becoming fat storage on my training days, because if my insulin sensitivity just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, those carbs on training day aren't going to go to the right place. And I'm in a surplus. And if they're not going to the muscle, where are they going? They're going to fat, because if they can't be used as energy, because we already met our energy needs, they can't go to the muscle. The last place to go is fat, and that's where they will go. And so my insulin sensitivity gets better by doing this. And so that way, like I said, those carbs can be used for the right reasons on the training day. Okay. And so I'll show you guys just kind of how I set up my non-training day real fast, but essentially my first 2 days, first 2 meals, no carbs. Once again, it just makes me feel better going into the day. And then I'll start slowly adding some in towards the end of the day so that I'm loaded with some carbohydrates going into the following day. I've also noticed when I'm hungry at this point, and so I like to keep some carbs there. So mentally I feel good, not stressed, and I go to bed feeling pretty solid, which typically gives me better sleep. Okay. So if you look at it here, guys, the average calories for the week is around 2,100. It kind of looks something like this. And then the average calories come out to 3,100. All right. So biggest things, match the food to the day. Protein is anchored. The carbs are depending upon your training and rest days. And then I increase those fats on the rest days. And the average calorie surplus is controlled, which is going to put me in a place to put on muscle and not too much fat. All right. I hope this was helpful. If you guys have any questions on what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, please leave it in the comment section below. If you want help setting up your own diet, please let me know. You could reach out to me at tommypomaticofitness@gmail.com or on Instagram at Tommy_Pomatico. Until next time, guys, catch you then.